Hey, what's going on, everyone? Juan Dhas here, and I wanted to do a little bit of a different video because, well, if you read the title, basically, I've just been exploring a bunch of stuff lately, and just kind of triggered a bunch of exploration, and so much so that, yeah, I've got, like, I don't know if you can see that or if it's even translating on the camera, but 2 pages of notes here of stuff that I've just been exploring over the past few days, and we'll get into that in a bit. But basically, this video is just a bit of a different style of a lesson, just to show you like how I would take an idea and then tweak it a bunch so that it really starts informing how you would play, or in this case, how I would play, and kind of how I go about taking ideas from other people and really twisting them and trying to find my own way as best as I can to, you know, absorb the information and hopefully play something a little bit new. By the way, a little bit of housekeeping. A huge thank you to everyone that's picked up the book so far, Etudes Volume 2. It's finally out. It only took me 6 years, but it's been a blast to see some of the reactions come in from it, hear what some people have to say, some really kind words. So thank you so much for all the support for it. Also, if you're seeing this video, by the time this is released, my Patreon's actually going to be back up and running, and some of these notes that I have in front of me will actually be up on the Patreon in the form of an extended video, but more on that later. So let's just dive right in. So long story short, I've been listening to a lot of Matt Garrison lately, who, if you haven't checked out Matt Garrison, phenomenal bassist, probably what some might consider the father of modern electric bass. If Jaco was the grandfather, then Matt would be like what really inspired a lot of modern electric bass playing. But Matt does these things with diminished language that, especially some spread triads, that's kind of moving it in minor thirds to get like that whole diminished sound. And I was talking with my friend Anthony Motoraja a few days ago, and he'd mentioned something of it and, you know, played it on a call, something along the lines of something along those lines. And then after we got off the call, I actually kind of misremembered the line, I think. I don't remember if it was the line Anthony played or it was kind of my interpretation of it, but I ended up with this, right? So basically it's just taking that G spread triad, and then I added sharp 11 and major 7 to it, so C sharp and F sharp, and then started moving that in minor thirds, which is a really cool sound, especially when you play it fast. But then this led me to thinking, okay, what else can I do with it? And this is a process I really like to talk about with students and just anyone who I have a chat with and is asking me a few questions about like how to absorb your own language, that I think a lot of people forget to talk about. And that's the idea of, you know, how do you know, it's all well and good to, you know, talk about like, okay, imitate, assimilate, innovate, but what actually goes into the innovation aspect of that that old saying? It's a Clark Terry thing, if I remember correctly. And so, long story short, let's say that we have this idea, right? So it's G major 7 with a sharp 11. So then a part of me was like, okay, what if I extend it even further? Well, we can actually add A on top, and that'll give us tension 9. I can even add sharp 9 on top for like a really out there kind of texture. So when you move it through the transposition, it sounds even more wild. very cool, very fun. But then my brain started going, okay, this is a really cool idea. Now, how can I twist this even more? And this is where, we start diving into some of the variations I came up with. So removing the transposition element, I just wanted to focus on this one idea. Because then no matter how you tweak it, even if you move it in minor thirds, while sometimes, depending on the chord type, it might not give you diminished, it does give you like this four-tonic cycle kind of thing, and it's a useful tool when you're playing on like to give you options of going outside the tonality and coming back in. So I came up with a bunch of variations, and I'm just going to share them all with you here, or at least the quote-unquote root variations. And then this is where I'm opening up my Patreon again. I figured all of the second page of stuff is actually all inversions that will give you different sounds. Different sounds altogether, and I'm adding that on as extra. But all of this stuff that I'm talking about in this video should give you plenty of food for thought and kind of ideas on how to tweak lines. Now, bear in mind, like I said, all of this is coming from that original concept of, how I would take a standard line, right? Like maybe a standard bebop line or whatever, and then start coming up with, okay, that's a common variation, but what about, or, like how many variations can I actually come up with based off of this one line so that I can expand on the language? And then even if I don't remember all of them, I've done such a deep exploration on the idea that it starts coming out of my playing in some way or another, and there's a more improvisational element to the thing. So the next thing I came up with was looking at this. What happens if I just make this minor? Take the major third, so G, D, and B, because we get the spread triad on the bottom, and then we actually make it minor. So we've got G minor, but we've still got that C sharp and F sharp. And you actually end up with minor major 7, sharp 11, which is a really cool structure. Actually, I'll get into this later, but it actually ends up giving you, basically this gave way to a bunch of the ideas and what ended up becoming the second page, which is all, polychordal, bitonal stuff. But this minor major 7, sharp 11, I'll touch on this later, will give you, it's basically a condensed version of the fourth mode of harmonic major. Go figure. Now you can add 9. So that'll give you F sharp minor over G minor, which will give you that harmonic major sound, right? Or you can add sharp 9 on top, which is a really fun texture to play with. It's actually more of a mode 3 structure, even if we are moving in minor thirds. So this goes back to what I was saying. Even though you might be moving in minor thirds, it's not explicitly a diminished sound, it's slightly altered. Sometimes it leans towards Messiaen's mode 3. So then the next variation, thought, okay, well, I've done minor. What if I did diminished? And you end up with diminished major 7. So same thing, then I start experimenting with, okay, what extra tension can I add on top? So we get diminished major 9. What about even more? So then I figured, okay, what if we kept this but altered the top structure? So this. By the way, if you're trying to play any of these on your own, don't feel like you have to do this massive stretch. You can play this F sharp over here. You'll have to find a different way of picking it, right? But for my playing style, this helps a lot, especially when I'm making those transitions at speed. So, moving on, we've got G7 sharp 11. So, if we want that Lydian sound, we can add 9 on top. I've also made a note here that we can add flat 9 to it, and it actually starts sounding more like an altered, like a way to get back to 1. Right? Just, you can use it as like a... like a nice little segue. So moving on, I'm still trying to keep this sharp 11 idea. I'm trying to preserve kind of the skeleton of the phrase, so to speak. And then I've got this minor with a sharp 11 idea. What if I made it minor 6? So if I made that a chord, and actually some of this actually ended up making some really cool chords, which I'll dive into a little bit later. But we have, right? Actually, if you move that in minor thirds, it's like a really weird diminished sound, but kind of like a little darker. Moving on, then I had some major 7 sharp 5 alterations. So we've got, so standard major 7 sharp 5, we've got the augmented triad in the bottom, sharp 11, major 7, so Lydian augmented, melodic minor. Oh, sorry, that was mode 3. Right? What if we then tweaked this even more? You can actually add sharp 9. So you actually have F sharp major over G augmented. Like a lot of this is kind of like modern classical structures. They're essentially modern classical structures. So moving on, we've got another one with just an augmented triad, but then kind of following that 6 idea. So we've got G augmented, so G, D sharp, B, C sharp, and E. You can add 9, so you get a major triad on top. Yeah, sharp 9 sounds a little weird, so this is an interesting point. Sometimes I would try, what if I did flat 9? I don't like the sound of that. It sounds a little too disjointed, for lack of a better word. What if I tried sharp 9? A little too dissonant. I don't like that tritone jump. So I settled for 9 for that structure. Amazing. Then we have 2 more variations, and these were kind of like the core variations. Everything else was kind of an inversion. I'll touch on those briefly before going into the Patreon video. But then we have major 7 flat 13 or flat 6, which would be harmonic major. So you've got the perfect 5th and the flat 6 in the same arpeggio or structure. Sharp 9 on top of that is really nice. You know, that's a really wicked kind of resolution. It's all that mode 3 kind of stuff because you're playing around with the major and the minor third in the same arpeggio. And then this you actually heard me play in the little intro improvised thingy. We've got kind of like or rather, that was minor 6, but you can do it with minor 7. And treat the sharp 11, instead of a tension, treat it more like an approach note. So that's a nice way of getting to G minor. So this would be kind of like how I would explore an idea. You know, let's say this was the original idea, or even adding that extra note. That's another variation, or that might have been the Matt idea, I forget. Again, it came out of a conversation from Anthony Mutaraja. If you don't know him, go check him out. But came out of a conversation, you know, speaking with him and hearing that idea or misremembering it, and then that turned into, well, I've got the sharp 11. What if I add another note? What if I add another note? So this is all driven by kind of a what if question. You know, what if I add this? What if I take this out? What if I change this? What if I change that? And that kind of led to the other page where, you know, suddenly I started realizing, okay, this is going to lead to some inversions. So I'm going to give you one of these just to kind of show you some cool voicings that I got from all of this. And then I'll dive into the Patreon video. So one I figured out was this would be a great E flat 7 sharp 9 thing. So if you actually move the middle note of the spread triad, so first off, let's say we started with this. Went from B to B flat. Brilliant. Then we went from D up to E flat. This would actually give us an E flat major chord. So then moving on from that, if I kept the original structure, we've got, we've got E flat 7, right? So the E flat 7 chord, you might know that drop 3 shape. And then we've got F sharp, which would be sharp 9. Now, if you add an extra note on top of this, you actually end up with an F sharp minor chord or an F sharp minor triad on top. So this would give us E flat minor, F sharp minor over E flat. Like a really crazy E flat altered. You can actually add sharp 11 to this. So instead of going, what was that? Yeah, that was what I was doing. So adding sharp 11, that would be that A, which would give you the F sharp minor over E flat structure. Now, some of these are a little wild to play, but that gives you some cool chord structures. There was another one that I figured out that was more of a diminished structure, but it was, this is a great 7-string voicing. So take a C minor spread triad, play the major 7, so you got minor major 7, and then you got your sharp 11 all the way up here. Very cool structure. Another chord, this was more of taking this D7, like D7 flat 9, 13 flat 9, but taking the 13 and moving it up an octave. So you get this. Pretty cool. And then take this and move it down the octave. So these are for your 7-string guys out there. And then there was another one, kind of going off of this structure, if I can remember it. It was it this? Yeah, it was that. Again, nice diminished structure. And a lot of that came out of like, okay, now I have these arpeggios. What happens if I condense them into a chord? Can I condense them into a chord? Some of these don't really condense down that well. So, you know, I just wanted to give you this video. It's a little bit of a different video because I don't usually show a lot of like, oh, like what if I take this idea and then tweak it beyond belief and see what I can come up with. And I really recommend people kind of do that with anything they transcribe. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a Parker solo, Sonny Stitt, some modern pianist or some modern musician, or something from another style of music. Just take the idea and twist it as much as you can, like almost where it almost becomes unrecognizable. And that's how you eventually start finding your own way as an improviser. So if you want to see more of these videos, please do feel free to let me know in the comments or just spitball any ideas. I've now got my mic set up back, so hopefully it sounds good on your end. And I'm going to dive into Patreon and just go through some of these inversions. So if you'd like, join me over there. By the way, if you are tuning into the Patreon, all of my old Patreon lessons are still up there, and they are up there. I think I was just checking the page. So if you want to check out some of the extended lessons from previous lesson videos, or some of the old PDFs I had, or even the backing tracks that I used to upload there, please do check it out. It would mean the world. And if you haven't yet, please do check out the book, the new book. All right, thanks so much, and see you in another video. Take care, guys.